I say it's a genetic advantage because having strong leg muscles was really good for the sport of speed skating. I got to excel very quickly in the sport, and long story short, when I moved to Calgary, in a matter of 3 days, I lost feeling from my chest to my toes. I lost bladder control and developed double vision, and literally went from one of the top speed skaters in Canada to not walking in 3 days.
Welcome to the Just Life podcast. It is our hope that the gritty, real, and uncensored insights we share with you here will help you get your shit together as you explore and discover what it takes to live your best life on your terms. We have a special series of podcasts coming up. This is number 2 about purpose. And in particular, sharing some insights from a number of people who have gone through the journey and really had some strong insights to share about what it takes to find purpose and what that looks like in their world. And this is all in the interest of now setting up an upcoming event called A Day on Purpose. And this is being hosted by Richard Bucher, who's also on the podcast with us today. Thank you for coming, Richard.
Thanks, David.
And then we have a guest, Crystal Phillips. And Crystal is going to share a little bit with us about the journey of what it took to have her find what it means to have a purposeful life in her own flavor. We all got our own version of it, and what does it look like? And it's not the same for everybody. And Crystal's going to be sharing some of that, speaking at A Day on Purpose in January. And what we're going to do on the podcast is get a little background teaser and get a sense of a little bit of what she'll share at the event in January. So welcome, Crystal.
Thank you.
Now, I'm going to let Richard just kind of guide the conversation here as we share a little bit about Crystal's journey. So, Richard, you have the microphone, hopefully properly this time.
Thanks, David. So, Crystal, I think it was about a year ago that I heard you speak at an event I was hosting with the Gold Mine Project. And you were telling the audience your story of, I guess I'd call it transition, maybe. And from what I remember of it, it was a path that was well defined by you, a choice that you'd made, a purpose that you'd identified and committed your life to, when the universe kind of threw you a curveball, as I remember. And then a couple of months ago, you and I ran into each other at a coffee shop, and I, like usual, when the universe sort of put something in front of me, kind of walked right by it. And then as I was walking out of the coffee shop with my wife, thought, this could be more important than just happenstance that this is where Crystal gets her coffee. So I turned on my heels, came back into the store, and then you may remember I was telling you a little bit about this event called A Day on Purpose and asking you if you'd be interested in participating, and to my absolute delight, you said yes. And so here we are. I wonder if you could share just a little bit about the story I'm referring to for those that are listening.
Happy to. Thanks for having me. So I guess that big goal of mine that I was very driven towards was the Olympics. I grew up with a genetic advantage that got me the nickname Quadzilla. I say it's a genetic advantage because having strong leg muscles was really good for the sport of speed skating. And so I entered into a very competitive sport of speed skating. I got to excel very quickly in the sport. And long story short, when I moved to Calgary, where the National Training Center is and the fastest ice in the world, this was where you kind of took your training and your skating to that next level. And the summer after I moved there, in a matter of 3 days, I lost feeling from my chest to my toes. I lost bladder control and developed double vision, and literally went from one of the top speed skaters in Canada to not walking in 3 days.
Wow.
So that was super annoying because I'm a teenager at the time, and I had this Olympic dream, and now I'm being told that I have multiple sclerosis and that I'll never speed skate again. Now, thankfully, I was still a teenager, and I say thankfully because up until that point, I hadn't really dealt with a whole lot of adversity, so not speed skating was so not a part of my reality that I genuinely didn't believe my doctors when they said that to me. It was just a matter of not if, but when I was going to get back to skating. So I got to utilize the resources I had on the national team to relearn how to walk, relearn how to bike, and eventually skate again. And I remember racing my first competition, and the crowd went wild. They were excited to see me back. And I remember crying myself to sleep that night because my times were now so sucky compared to before I was sick.
Right.
And I wake up the next morning and the entire left side of my body went numb. And that's when it's really hit me, okay, I'm not this invincible teenager. I really do have this serious disease, and I've got to do absolutely everything I can to get back skating. So I looked at both conventional and unconventional options. Over the next 4 years, I went through the roller coaster of MS, meaning you go into relapse and then you come out of relapse. For some reason, your immune system attacks your nervous system. That's the thought for how MS works. But I was able to get back to an elite level, and by 2009 just qualified for the trials for the 2010 Olympics and went into the pre-Olympic season of training. I woke up one morning blind in my left eye, and that's a fairly common symptom of MS. Got more tests done, and my neurologist said, "I'm sorry, Crystal, it looks like your disease is progressing, and you should be prepared for the reality that you could be in a wheelchair in the next couple of years, and we highly recommend much more aggressive drug treatment plan." Started listing the side effects, which sounded worse than the disease itself. So I made the decision to go off all of my drugs and really take my non-pharmaceutical, unconventional approach to just the next level so that I could get back skating. And 8 months later, I came just a few spots off the Canadian Olympic team, and 9 years later is now. And although you can't see me, I'm not in a wheelchair like I was predicted to be in. And not only that, but I am flourishing with great health and have been for the last 9 years. So it's been a very positive journey despite such a traumatic experience.
Yeah, I remember when you shared, when I heard this story, and I thought of all the labels, if you'll forgive the term, you'd assign to Crystal Phillips. Knowing what I know of your story, completely healthy, with absolutely no signs of any illness of any description, isn't one of them. You wouldn't think that. You wouldn't associate MS with you. And so really interesting, compelling, the determination that you took from that. And I know you'll talk more about this on the day on January 25th, but and I recall you talking about how you've really found a new purpose completely that sort of built on the foundation of speed skating and that whole life, but now doesn't really have a whole lot to do with that activity.
Yeah, it's true. I sort of joke that these new journeys that I've been on, that have been, my life got steered in this way because of my disease and what I went through. And they turned out to be new sort of Olympic dreams. I call them my new Olympic medals, even though they aren't actually the Olympics. But the satisfaction, the dream is just as big, if not bigger. And so to be driving towards that and reaching it in certain parts has been really cool.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that will be at this event and then maybe listening to this that have been forced into a situation of having to redefine who they are. I work with a lot of people who are out of work, not by choice, and don't see a viable option for them to continue their career in the direction they've been going. So engineers and geologists and geophysicists, for example. And so now having to reinvent themselves completely, not because they want to, but because they have to. Which parallels an awful lot, it seems.
Yeah, I can relate.
For you. So how did you do that without just going down a different place, just sort of throwing your hands up?
It's a good question. I won't give too much away, but I would say that it really comes down to knowing yourself and playing your strengths and outsourcing the rest.
Oh. Can you tell me a little bit more about outsourcing the rest?
Yeah, so I think that we're all gifted with certain strengths in this world, and when you do have a good understanding of who you are, what your values are, and what you're trying to achieve, and then you also are realistic about what am I good at and what do I love doing, and then what am I terrible at and don't love doing. And so it's not a matter of, you don't want to grow and learn and develop into, areas that you're maybe not as gifted, but I think that you have gifts for a reason, and the more you play those and focus on your strengths as opposed to just trying to make up for quote unquote weaknesses, I think that you're going to have a much easier way to find your path.
Right. Mm-hmm. So what's it like now? I mean, do you go to speed skating events and sit in the stands?
Yeah, on occasion.
So what's that like for you?
It's weird. It's nostalgic. It's weird to not recognize everybody. Mm-hmm. I'm a very social creature, and the Olympic Oval represents this place where you walk in and everybody from the maintenance crew to the Zamboni drivers to the coaches and to the Olympic gold medalists like Jeremy Weatherspoon and Katrina Maydon, and you're having the same kind of conversations with them all. And now I walk in and it's this building and all the same pieces but completely different people, which it's exciting, and you kind of feel like a fly on the wall in a sense.
Mm-hmm. But do you ever experience a sense of regret, like that's not who you are anymore?
No, I don't feel like that. I mean, I loved being a speed skater. I'm so grateful for everything that speed skating gave to me. Mm-hmm. I think that the best thing ever for any athlete is once you realize that you have translational skills that you developed in sport that are really, really valuable in other parts of your life. And when you figure out that power that you have, your confidence is built, and you can start dreaming just like you did for the Olympics about other things in life, because you talk to someone who's going for the Olympics and it's sort of like, how dare you say there's anything like the Olympics? Because that's really like, you're so tunnel vision. It's all you know.
Yeah. That's interesting, the term you use, translational skills. I haven't heard that term before. And my brain is sort of following, I feel like a border collie following a tennis ball that just got thrown for me. Because it feels like it's building a path, like almost a plus 15 to whatever next is from whatever used to be. Is that what it feels like for you? Yeah,
well, and it has something to do with, again, playing your strengths. So understanding, I might not have a PhD in neuroscience, but I have these other strengths that could actually be applicable to neuroscience. And I guess at the conference you'll hear more about why on earth a speed skater is talking about neuroscience. But that's my whole world now.
So my mom's got MS, and I can relate on a very different level. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the story and how you describe it at the event. And so as much as I want to ask more about it, that's why we're doing this podcast. So I really thank you for spending the time, as short as it is, to just give people a sense of what's possible. And that's really the biggest objective here. As I've mentioned a few times here, the first ever Day on Purpose conference will be happening here in Calgary. A Day on Purpose is bringing together a fantastic community of speakers and presenters, as you've listened to today, people like you and me at various stages of uncovering their own purpose. It will be a day of stories and discovery that will work to make a very high level and at times hard to understand topic relatable and uncomplicated. So stay tuned. You won't want to miss this insight.